Hello, greetings, and welcome to part 2 of our discussion about rocks. So for this session, we will be zooming in on sedimentary rocks. Now, sedimentary rocks, these are rocks that are formed by the accumulation or deposition of mineral or organic particles at the Earth's surface. And sedimentary rocks, they are formed by erosion. And in the process of erosion, sediments are formed. Now, these sediments, they are carried by running water, and eventually, these sediments, they are deposited in layers with the older ones at the bottom. And eventually, these layers, they get compacted and they get cemented together, and eventually they form sedimentary rocks. Now, to give you a more detailed explanation of how sedimentary rocks are formed, let's take a look at this animated illustration. So as you could see here, sedimentary rocks are formed by erosion. Eventually, the erosion will form sediments. These sediments, they are carried by running water, and they get deposited in a body of water like a lake or a river, and they are deposited in layers. Eventually, over time, these layers, they get accumulated, and the accumulated sediments, eventually they get pressed together and form sedimentary rocks. Alright, so I have already mentioned the processes that are involved. And as we learned in the past, rivers, lakes can deposit sediments over time. And these sediments, they build up in layers over time. They form heavy layers that squeeze sediments underneath. So the bottom layers, they get compacted by the pressure of the layers above them. Okay, and after compaction, those layers underneath, they get cemented and they form sedimentary rocks. So there are several processes that are involved in the formation of sedimentary rocks. So first, these sediments, they get deposited in a body of water like a lake or a river. And these sediments, as they form layers, as they are deposited in layers, they get compacted. Okay, the process is known as compaction. Compaction is the process that squeezes or compacts the sediments. And when these sediments, they get compacted or they get squeezed, they get cemented together. The process is known as cementation. Cementation takes place when dissolved minerals are deposited in the tiny spaces among the sediments. Eventually, those sediments harden to form sedimentary rocks. So those are the processes that are involved in the formation of sedimentary rocks. So sedimentary rocks, they begin through the process known as erosion, and erosion will result in the formation of sediments. These sediments, they get carried by running water or ice or wind, and these sediments, they get deposited in layers, say in a body of water like a lake or a river. Now the bottom layers, they get compacted or they get squeezed by the weight of the layers above them. And eventually, minerals would be deposited in those tiny spaces among the sediments, or they get cemented together and hardened to form sedimentary rocks. So sedimentary rocks are formed from materials that have been shifted from place to place. So they are carried by water, ice, wind, and gravity. Eventually, these sediments, they get deposited in layers. And these layers, they get compacted and they get cemented together to form sedimentary rocks. And fossils may be trapped in those layers. That's why fossils are mostly found in sedimentary rocks. So that's how sedimentary rocks are formed. So sedimentary rocks, they begin as sediments as a result of erosion. These sediments, they are carried by running water, wind, or ice. These sediments, they get deposited in layers in a body of water like a lake or a river. The bottom layers of sediments, they get compacted or they get squeezed together, and dissolved minerals, they are deposited in between those tiny spaces between the sediments. Eventually, they harden to form sedimentary rocks. Alright, so isn't that fascinating indeed? Alright, and here is a picture of a mountain made up of sedimentary rocks. So you could see those layers of sediments that hardened over time. Okay, so sedimentary rocks are formed at or near the Earth's surface. And there is no heat and there is no pressure involved in the formation of sedimentary rocks. So as I have mentioned a while ago, these sediments, they are deposited in layers called strata. The word strata means layers of rock. And there is a process that is involved in the formation of these layers of rock. The process is known as stratification. Stratification is the process in which sedimentary rocks are arranged in layers. Now, at this point, let us now identify the different types of sedimentary rocks. Now, sedimentary rocks can be classified as clastic sedimentary rocks, chemical sedimentary rocks, and organic sedimentary rocks. Now, when we speak of clastic sedimentary rocks, these are conglomerates such as breccia or breccia, sandstones, shale, or mudstones. Then we have chemical sedimentary rocks. Now under chemical, we have evaporate rocks. These rocks are formed due to the evaporation of saline water or seawater. Examples, we have gypsum, halite, or rock salt. And carbonate chemical sedimentary rocks, these are formed basically from calcium carbonate such as limestone and the controversial mineral dolomite. Okay? And we have organic rocks. So when you say organic sedimentary rocks, these are formed due to the decomposition of organic remains under temperature and pressure, such as coal. Coal is an example of organic sedimentary rock. Alright, so that's how we classify sedimentary rocks. Now, let's go now into the details of these types of sedimentary rocks, starting with clastic sedimentary rocks. Now, when we speak of clastic sedimentary rocks, these are sedimentary rocks that are made of fragments of pre-existing rocks that are cemented together with calcite or quartz. So we call that conglomerate. Alright, and examples of clastic sedimentary rocks includes breccia or breccia. Then we have shale and sandstone. So these clastic sedimentary rocks, they are made of fragments of pre-existing rocks that are cemented together by quartz or calcite. Now, another type of sedimentary rock is known as chemical sedimentary rock. Now, chemical sedimentary rocks, they are made of minerals that crystallize out of solution to become rock. And one example of a chemical sedimentary rock is limestone. Now, limestone is a chemical sedimentary rock composed primarily of calcium carbonate, okay, with the chemical formula CaCO3. Now, limestone is usually an organic sedimentary rock that forms from the accumulation of shale, coral, algal, and fecal debris. Now, since eventually over time, those organic substances present in limestone, they turn into calcium carbonate that makes limestone a chemical sedimentary rock. So we have other examples of chemical sedimentary rocks such as gypsum, we have rock salt or halite, chert, and travertine. And lastly, the third type of sedimentary rock is known as organic sedimentary rock or biologic sedimentary rock. Organic or biologic sedimentary rocks, these are made from the remains of plants and animals. And the best example of an organic or biologic sedimentary rock is coal. Now, coal is an organic sedimentary rock that forms from the accumulation and preservation of plant materials, usually in a swamp environment. Coal is a combustible rock, and along with oil and natural gas, it is one of the three most important sources of fossil fuel. So those are the types of sedimentary rocks. So before we move on to the next type of rock, which is the metamorphic rock, let's watch this fascinating video about sedimentary rocks. Okay, so let's watch this.
Welcome to Moo Moo Math and Science. In this video, let's take a look at sedimentary rock examples. Sedimentary rocks are formed from pre-existing rocks or pieces of once living organisms. They form from deposits that accumulate on the Earth's surface or under the ocean. These particles that form a sedimentary rock are called sediment and may be composed of minerals or once living matter called organic matter. Sedimentary rocks can be divided into several groups. Some common groups include clastic sedimentary rocks, which form from fragments of pre-existing rocks, chemical sedimentary rocks, which form by precipitation of minerals from water. Precipitation is when dissolved minerals come out of water. And organic sedimentary rocks, such as coal and limestone, which form from the accumulation of plant and animal debris. Clastic sedimentary rocks are subdividing according to the dominant particle size. These particle sizes are ranked from smallest to largest. Clay is the smallest, then silt, sand, gravel, pebble, and boulder. Up first, shale. Shale is a fine-grained, clastic sedimentary rock composed of mud. This mud is a mix of flakes of clay minerals and silt-sized particles of other minerals, especially quartz and calcite. Shale is very fine-grained. Next, let's look at sandstone. Sandstone is one of the most common types of sedimentary rock found throughout the world. It is a clastic sedimentary rock composed of sand-sized grains of mineral rock or even organic material. It also contains some cemented material that binds the sand grains together. Next, conglomerate. Conglomerate is a coarse-grained clastic sedimentary rock composed of pebbles and boulders. The space between these pebbles and boulders is generally filled with smaller particles of calcite or quartz cement that binds the rock together. And finally, limestone. Limestone is an organic sedimentary rock that is often composed of the skeleton fragments of marine organisms such as coral. About 10% of sedimentary rocks found on Earth are limestones.
I was walking my dog on the beach when I noticed that the cliffs are made of horizontal stripes of rock. But what causes this? To understand this, we need to explain how sediments are formed and explain how sediments are turned into layers of new rocks. Existing rocks can be broken down into small pieces or sediments in a process called weathering. There are three main types of weathering. Physical weathering is caused by temperature changes. For example, in freeze-thaw weathering, water gets into cracks in the rock. When the water freezes, it expands and forces the rock apart. This happens many times, eventually breaking the rock. An example of chemical weathering is when acid rain reacts with substances in rocks. Even plants or animals can break up rocks. This is biological weathering. The sediments formed by weathering can be moved away by water, ice, wind, or gravity. The combined process of weathering and transport is called erosion. Eventually, sediments settle in one place. For example, they may sink to the bottom of the sea. This is called deposition. More layers of sediment are deposited on top. Over millions of years, the weight of the layers above compress the ones below, and they harden into sedimentary rock in a process called compaction. Sometimes another substance seeps between the sediments and hardens, sticking or cementing the sediments together. The whole process leads to the formation of horizontal layers of sedimentary rock. So, erosion breaks old rocks into small pieces and transports the sediments. These are deposited in layers and compacted into sedimentary rocks. This explains the stripy appearance of the cliffs at the beach. Each stripe is a layer of sedimentary rock.
Now that is really fascinating about sedimentary rocks. Well, I guess we can now proceed to a more detailed study of the next type of rock, which is the metamorphic rock. Now the word metamorphic means to change shape. Now a particular type of rock like an igneous rock or a sedimentary rock, if it is subjected to extreme heat and temperature, that rock will transform into metamorphic rock. Changes with temperature and pressure will allow a certain type of rock to change into metamorphic rock, but that rock will remain in solid form. And the processes that takes place in the formation of metamorphic rock, they take place deep in the earth. Alright, so that's how metamorphic rocks are formed. So a type of rock like an igneous rock or a sedimentary rock, when subjected to extreme heat and pressure, will turn that rock into metamorphic rock. Okay, and that is so fascinating indeed. Now, any rock type like an igneous rock or a sedimentary rock, as long as that rock is subjected to extreme heat and pressure, will convert that rock into metamorphic rock. Rocks that are subjected to extreme heat and pressure will convert or will change that rock into metamorphic rock. Now, there are several ways in which rocks are converted into metamorphic rock. Now, one way is called contact metamorphism. Now, contact metamorphism involves an increase in temperature. That increase in temperature is due to magma. Now, this increase in temperature will change the composition of the rock. And if there are minerals present, those minerals are changed into new minerals. So in contact metamorphism, the heat from the magma burns the rock surrounding an intrusion. This creates a small amount of metamorphic rock. So contact metamorphism involves increase in temperature because of magma. So everybody kindly take a look at this diagram. So we have magma and we have here the surrounding rocks. So magma heats up the surrounding rocks. Those rocks that are in contact with magma, there will be an increase in temperature, and that increase in temperature will slowly change the composition of the rocks into metamorphic rocks. Those rocks that are in contact with magma will experience an increase in temperature, and that increase in temperature will change the composition of the rocks into metamorphic rock. Hence, it is called contact metamorphism. Now, another way in which rocks are converted into metamorphic rocks is known as regional metamorphism. Now, regional metamorphism involves changes in pressure. This time, pressure is involved. Now, pressure builds up in the rocks that is deep within the earth. Large pieces of the earth's crust collide, and the rock is deformed and chemically changed by heat and especially pressure. So that is regional metamorphism. This happens when large pieces of the earth collide together and create heat and extreme pressure. This extreme pressure will convert the rocks into metamorphic rock. So regional metamorphism involves increase in pressure, and this increase in pressure will change the rock into metamorphic rock. Now, at this point, let us now study how metamorphic rocks are classified. So first, we have what we call foliated metamorphic rocks. Now, foliated metamorphic rocks are metamorphic rocks that contain aligned grains of flat minerals. And these aligned grains, they appear as bands or stripes. Now, one good example of a foliated metamorphic rock is gneiss. Now, gneiss is a foliated metamorphic rock that has a banded or striped appearance, as you could see in the picture, and it is made up of granular mineral grain. So everybody kindly look closely at that picture. So that's gneiss. Now you will notice that gneiss has a banded or striped appearance. So that makes gneiss a foliated metamorphic rock. Now, there are other examples of foliated metamorphic rocks such as slate, schist, and as I have mentioned a while ago, we have gneiss. Now, the other type of metamorphic rocks is known as non-foliated metamorphic rocks. Now, non-foliated metamorphic rocks are metamorphic rocks in which the mineral grains are not arranged in planes or bands. So meaning that the metamorphic rock does not exhibit any banded or striped appearance. And the best example of a non-foliated metamorphic rock is marble. Okay, marble is a non-foliated metamorphic rock, as you could see in the picture, that is produced from the metamorphism of limestone. So meaning that marble came from limestone. When limestone was subjected to extreme heat and pressure, that limestone was transformed into marble. And as you could see in the picture, marble does not exhibit any banded or striped appearance. So that makes marble non-foliated metamorphic rock. Now, marble is composed primarily of calcium carbonate. Okay, so other examples, we have quartzite and we have here white marble. So these are non-foliated metamorphic rocks. Now, at this point, let us now determine if the following rock samples are foliated or non-foliated. So we have here the three rock samples. We have amphibolite, quartzite, and phyllite. So determine if those rock samples are foliated or non-foliated.
All right, in this video we're going to be talking about metamorphic rocks. Please get your rocks flowcharts ready so we can fill in our final third column. Now, recall, rocks are classified according to how they form. Igneous form from cooling and solidified magma. Sedimentary form from compacted and cemented sediments. And now our metamorphic rocks, these are ones that are going to undergo some sort of change, a metamorphosis. And what drives that change is exposure to heat, really intense heat, or pressure, intense pressure. So metamorphic rocks are rocks that are changed as a result of exposure to intense heat and or pressure. So there are two types of metamorphism that occur in nature. And the first type is called contact metamorphism, and the second is called regional metamorphism. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between these two. Now, imagine you have the surface of the earth here, and you can see some trees, and these colors here, these are layers of rock underground. And so I'm going to show you how contact metamorphism works. The reason it's called contact is because it involves existing rocks coming into contact with really intense heat, which is generally provided by lava or magma. So imagine that one day an intrusion of magma forces its way up through these layers of rock. Now, all of the existing rock are going to be burned by the heat of the magma. So all along the edge of this magma, shown here in orange, you're going to have rocks that have been burned by the heat of the magma. That burning causes them to change or metamorphosize into something new. So anywhere you see the orange, you're going to have some metamorphic rock. This is caused primarily by heat. Let's fill this in on our flowchart. Okay, so the first type is contact metamorphism, and this is caused by contact with heat. Whenever a rock comes into contact with magma or lava, it is burned or metamorphosized by that heat. But let's talk about the second type, regional metamorphism. Now this one is going to be more from pressure. So let's imagine that I have a plate boundary here, a fault, a crack, and that these two plates are coming together. So it's a convergent plate boundary. Well, as you can imagine, in the middle here, there's going to be immense pressure, and that pressure can cause the rocks trapped in the middle to become metamorphosized. So all along this boundary, you'll find metamorphic rocks. Again, this is different from contact in that it's not so much about the heat, it's more about the pressure. Let's take a look at what we see here. This is a typical progression of metamorphism that occurs, starting with the sedimentary rock shale. If you add heat and pressure, it will metamorphosize to slate. If you add more heat and pressure, it will become phyllite, more, and it will become schist, Even more, and it will become the metamorphic rock gneiss. Take a look at that gneiss sample down there. You'll notice it has bands of minerals. That's a result of the intense pressure. Now, if you were to take gneiss and add additional heat and pressure, it would likely melt into magma or lava, and then it would become an igneous rock. So gneiss is generally the extent of metamorphism that we see. Let's go back to our flowchart. So our second type of metamorphism is called regional metamorphism, and this is caused primarily by pressure. Of course, all of this is summarized in your reference tables on the metamorphic rock chart on page 7. You'll notice type of metamorphism, composition, what minerals are involved, how big the crystals are, whether it has banding or not, the names of the rock, and the map symbols. And of course, we'll learn lots more about this chart in detail in the coming days. Thanks for listening.